You know, it was an old shirt.
She's been here for 40 years.
All right, it's 9:30. We'll go ahead and get started on our pre-meeting for our 10 o'clock council meeting. First on the agenda, approval of monthly bills. I don't think we had any changes. Any questions? Approval of minutes. There were no changes. Any questions? All right, public hearings. Resolution 23034, approved request for special event retail liquor license for WIT LLC doing business as JW Steakhouse located at 133 2nd Avenue Northeast, Decatur, Alabama, 35601. Any questions? Resolution 23035, authorize application of Alabama Historic Commission grant for Austinville Historic Survey.
No change.
Any questions? Resolution 23036, authorize Alabama Historic Commission grant for Delano Historic Structures Report.
No change.
All right, any questions? Resolution 23037, approve funding for Recruitment Incentive Award Program.
No change.
Any questions? Resolution 23038, approve budget amendment of $11,842 to repair Point Mallard Golf Course irrigation line. Any questions? Resolution 23039, approve agreement with Pewright McAnally for Bunny Lane Road improvements. Any questions? Resolution 23040, award bid number 23005 for tree and stump removal to Asplund. All right, any questions? Resolution 23041, award bid number 23006 for mosquito sprayers to Adapco. Any questions? Resolution 23042, award RFP 23007 to Doing It With You Marketing for social media services. Any questions? Resolution 23043, authorize the mayor to execute the purchase agreement for land for DYS facility.
No change.
All right, any questions? Resolution 23044, approved DDRA additional appropriation for Johnson Street Alley Improvement Project. Any changes?
No change.
Were you able to look at some?
Yeah, they gave me some elevations, and I'm okay with it, they can do it that way.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, resolution 23045, approved funding for locating Horton House in Decatur, Ciota project.
No change.
Any questions?
Yes. I went back and watched the meeting when they presented, and the ask was $1 million. And then tourism and hospitality gave 300. So I was thinking our ask was gonna be 700, but it's on the agenda as 888. So that is right.
Yeah, so I think the $1 million number was just something that was
It's a placeholder.
said as $1 million is what we're gonna, but the sheet I've always had with the breakdown of costs was a little over $1 million too. Now included in that was 20,000 or so, I'm rounding like whoever else did, but was the cost of the property, which has already been purchased, so you can minus that, but 350,000 was to the moving company. Everything else was utility.
Okay, so
About 448 is Athens.
And the way the resolution reads is up to that amount.
Yeah.
So with it being up to that amount, and Athens Utilities having the 448, which is the largest portion, and riding the route with an electrical contractor that does services like this for vessels and homes. I'd like to ask the council to find a way to put funding in to get a professional electrical engineer to do an assessment of the route to see if we can determine if this can be done for less. That is the utilities. Of course, Athens will it's their system. They'll ultimately have the say-so in it, but if we can have at least a way to say, hey, we had a professional, because the company that they used, Stake, I think is the name of the company, with their bill of material, they're not a professional engineer, they're a staking company. And so we want to see if we can find a way to get that cost down. And
Would that group or person you're talking about work with the moving company?
Who
Who determined the route?
The moving company determined the route, but the utility company received a recommendation from Stake on the estimate. And they made it clear that it's only an estimate, so when it would have to bid, and whenever it bids, don't know if it'll go up or down. I'd like to see if we can find a good engineered approach to this. It has in that bill of material from Stake, it has a lot of materials in it that actually show the CIOTA, which is being funded by the city, to replacing poles and things of that nature. So it's almost in a way rebuilding a lot of the utility system.
I mean, I'm open to anything that can help with the cost, in between now and actually some communication Francis and I had a couple of weeks ago was if there's a way to reduce the cost in between, then it costs less and it costs less to fund. So I'm open to that. I just don't know enough about what you're talking about to say, but if that's an option to help reduce the cost, I'm certainly not opposed to it.
So in effect, let me ask one question. So in effect, we might end up, because we're paying for the engineering company, paying more.
We could, but I don't think so based on the ride that I made with the electrical contractor that actually does this kind of work.
Could DU give some guidance on, they have engineers that...
They could give some guidance on recommending an engineer.
Okay. I mean, obviously that's something we would have to vote on and determine the cost, but I'm open to trying to reduce it if that can help us.
Thank you.
But I think we will have time to do that.
Yeah, so I think of course, depending on what I read in the newspaper, but it sounds like that the Garrett family just needs an answer that we're committed today, right?
Yes, that's right.
We have time to make a move.
Yeah, and you commit by committing money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
That's right. That's right. I think I don't expect the house to be being moved in 3 weeks, do we?
I missed his comment, so
Yeah.
you need to tell me what you're talking about.
Okay, so to move, I think that the council probably wants to do everything they can to move the house, and but there is one of the line items on all the actions that need to happen to move the house is to temporarily disable some of the utilities along the route to move the house. And that cost is very high. It's $448,000. And that cost was determined by a company, it's a staking company. We want to see if we can get a professional electrical engineer to go and look at the route and put together a cost proposal to see if that price can come down considerably. I rode the route a couple of times with an electrical contractor that does that type of work, and they're not putting down the quote, but they said that their quote would be considerably less, to the tune of about $150,000. So if we could, we're wanting to fund, the council will make a decision to fund CIOTA up to $800 and something thousand. This might be able to bring that price down.
And I
We took the route that Mr. Kennedy, we talked to Mr. Kennedy and such. Yes, ma'am.
So you saying you have a better route?
Ma'am?
Are you saying you have a better route?
No, ma'am, using that route,
Okay,
using Mr. Kennedy's route.
okay.
If I could comment,
Mayor President, they need to, see, we're on YouTube and nobody can hear the people that are listening on YouTube.
Yeah, if you don't
to be able
mind
to hear
coming
you.
to the,
We want to hear you, we hear you, but we want the people that are listening to go to the microphone.
but also we will have,
To discuss it.
well, we'll have this opportunity during the actual meeting to discuss if y'all would rather wait for that. But I personally don't have a problem, and I think we'll have time in between to solve that. But we can ask that in the meeting too. All right, any other questions, thoughts? All right. Ordinances, ordinance 234550, amend transient occupancy tax ordinance.
There's no change to that. That's the same thing that's been put on the agenda.
Okay. All right, boards and, any questions? Boards and committees, reappoint Police Chief Todd Pinion to the Morgan County Emergency 911 Board with term expiring April 11th, 2027. All right, any questions? There was a change on this one. Reappoint Dr. S. Kenny Copeland to the Healthcare Authority Board with term expiring January 1st, 2026. We just changed the full name. Any questions? Reappoint Melissa Craig to the Healthcare Authority Board with term expiring December 31st, 2028. Any questions? All right, we'll get started at 10 o'clock.
we're not going to, are we?
It's not our decision, it's ours.
Who's, is it CV? Okay.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Dane Shaw will lead us in our invocation and pledge.
Father, we are grateful again to gather together. We ask for your wisdom and your strength. We thank you for what you're doing in our nation, and we ask you just continue to move in our city. And we thank you for Jesus. In his name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Dane. Roll call. Here.
Here.
Here. Here. All right, I think everybody that signed up for public comment is on a specific agenda item, so we will move into our agenda. All right, approval of monthly bills. Approved January 2023 monthly bills.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Pepper, second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion?
Discussion.
On monthly bills?
Yes. There's a line item on,
Well-
excuse me. Herb Underwood, District 1. On page 8, there's a line item for $151,000 or $52,000, a tradecraft program. I'd like to point out we have a great opportunity to embed a trade tech school under the coffers, which are leaving our city and being redistributed out of Montgomery over to Huntsville for a construction trade program that purely is a 2-module, 6-month program for 12 months at no cost. And we're sending $150,000 over there for that program. We need to have that here.
Yeah, I think it's $1 per, I can't remember.
It's
per
on every
thousand.
building permit, it's the
Yeah.
state.
1 per 1,000, okay. All right, any other discussion from the council? All right, roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Monthly bills are approved 5-0. Approval of minutes, we'll take A and E first.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Pepper,
Second.
second by Mr. Pike. This is A and E. Any discussion? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Abstain.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Those A and E are approved 4-0 with 1 abstention. Next, we'll take B, C, and D.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Pepper, second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Those minutes are approved 5-0. All right, public hearings, resolution 23034, approved request for special event retail liquor license for WIT LLC doing business as JW Steakhouse located at 133 2nd Avenue Northeast, Decatur, Alabama 35601. Lori.
This is a special event for the Arts Council that JW Steakhouse is presenting.
So moved.
Hold on
Oh,
one second.
sorry.
This is a public hearing. If there's any, we'll open the public hearing now. If there's anyone here to speak on this item. All right, seeing no one here to speak, we'll consider the public hearing closed. And there's been a motion by Mr. Pepper,
Second.
second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Resolution 23034 is approved 5-0. Resolutions, resolution 23035, authorize application of Alabama Historic Commission grant for Austinville Historic Survey.
Yes, Mayor, Council, Alan Stover with the Community Development Department. This grant will just allow us to do a historic survey of the Austinville area, and we're just requesting y'all's approval for this grant.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McMaster, second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion?
Discussion.
Sure.
Mayor? I salute Alan Stover and Community Development, the hard work they provide. Also our Decatur Historic Commission, who a few months ago completed a old Decatur and Albany Historic District review similar to the one being requested for Austinville, where we raised our children. However, once again, Northwest is excluded, Old Town, cut off at the knees. I say we move for consideration and include Old Town for this survey as well.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Resolution 23035 is approved 5-0. Resolution 23036, authorize Alabama Historic Commission grant for Delano Historic Structures.
Yes, this grant will just allow us to do a historic structures report for those structures that are in Delano. We're just requesting your approval.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Pepper, second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Resolution 23036 approved 5-0. Resolution 23037 approved funding for recruitment incentive award program.
Rochelle Sandlin, Human Resources Department. We're just bringing forward a resolution to approve the funding for a recruitment incentive program. We're proposing $50,000 to start. It's a better spend of our money than recruitment advertising. We're enticing our employees, encouraging employees to help build our team with qualified candidates. The Personnel Board has approved the procedural document. They're 100% supportive of this, and we want to track this information in a line item specific to it so we have the data to measure the ROI.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Pepper, second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion?
So we don't
Discussion.
spend unless there's actually a referral or incentive to do so. So basically, if it's not utilized, it's just sitting there.
Correct.
Okay.
This is in anticipation of what I think you've seen might come from that. And I'll let you have discussion, but you've got to sign in for agenda items that you want to speak on. You only signed in for one.
Should I limit it to the one I signed into, or?
That would be better, but in the future, if you sign in for multiple agenda items, I have no problem, but we typically would have the public comment before we have a motion and discussion for the council.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, any discussion?
May I?
Well, do you want to save it for the Horton
Okay.
discussion? Yeah,
I did bring a 3-minute timer with me.
good. All right, any other discussion on this one? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Resolution 23037 approved 5-0. Resolution 23038 approved budget amendment for $11,842 to repair Point Mallard Golf Course irrigation line.
Mayor, Council, Council President Stephanie McLean, Point Mallard Park. This resolution is asking to repair the main irrigation line at Point Mallard Golf Course. We have a valve that needs replacing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McMaster, second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion?
Was this the cheapest option?
Yes, sir.
And this came about because of the freezing temperatures?
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Resolution 23038 approved 5-0. Resolution 23039 approve agreement with Pewright McAnally for Bunny Lane road improvements.
Yes, Mayor, Council, been asked to look into widening Bunny Lane into a 2-lane road, and this is to get the engineering started for that project.
So
Motion by Mr. McMaster.
Second.
Second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Resolution 23039 approved 5-0. Resolution 23040 award bid number 23005 for tree and stump removal to Esplund.
Mayor and Council, I'm Charles Booth, the purchasing agent for the city. We got 3 responses to this bid solicitation that we did for Park and Rec, with Asplin being the lowest bidder.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Pepper, second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Resolution 23040 approved 5-0. Resolution 23041 award bid number 23006 for mosquito sprayers to Adapco.
Yes, sir. We got 2 responses on this, with the DAPCO being the lowest.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McMasters,
Second.
second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion? Roll call.
Wagner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Resolution 23041 approved 5-0. Resolution 23042 award RFP 23007 to Doing It With You Marketing for Social Media Services.
Yes, sir. This was a request for proposals for media services. We got 2 responses. And the best response was for Do It With You marketing.
What's the total?
Two components to it.
Right at
About, yeah, 25.
And that's an annual cost?
That's annual, yes,
And
sir.
we can you explain kind of, it's not a year?
No, sir, I requested annual cost just for comparison basis. And we have provisions in the document that you can non-appropriate funds, or we can amend the agreement.
Yeah, to shorten it potentially, okay. All right, we have a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Pike,
Second.
second by Mr. McMasters. Any discussion? Roll call.
Leidner.
Aye.
McMasters.
Aye.
Jackson.
No.
Aye.
Pepper.
No.
Resolution 23042 is approved 3-2. Resolution.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Booth, about 2 months ago, we received a notice that you will be retiring from the city
Yes, sir.
as our purchasing agent, and I think this is your last council meeting.
Yes, sir.
And just wanted to recognize you for your service and wish you the best in your retirement. Stop by sometime.
Yes, sir, I will. I definitely will. I appreciate the opportunity from the council and the mayor. And I appreciate, I can't look at them, my colleagues,
Yeah.
and the great working relationship I had with them, and the friendships I've developed out here in Decatur.
Likewise.
How many years?
All total 11.
Well, thanks. I think we all do, the mayor's thoughts. Appreciate your service, and I'm sure we'll see you at Moe's. Thanks, Mayor. All right, resolution 23043, authorizing the mayor to execute the purchase agreement for land for DYS facility.
Chip is out of, he's not here today, so that was scheduled. Herman Marks, Legal Department. This agreement allows us to do preliminary evaluation to make sure the property will support structure. And this approves a contract with the owners. And, this has been a lengthy journey, but there's 2 different agencies involved, and we've now got approval from them, and this moves us forward. And it's a conditional agreement. If for any reason we do not think this property is suitable from a land or any other reason, we can come out of the agreement, and that's what this does. Okay. It's $170,100.
Where's
appraised value.
where's the property located? Is it the central market?
Caddy corner to Kerry Matthews.
So
Okay.
Memorial Drive.
Okay.
Yeah, on Memorial, right before you come to the railroad tracks. All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Pepper,
Second.
second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have some. You know, I am 100% in favor of getting land for a youth services facility, and that youth services needs to have their own facility. But when we go back and we look at time, in 1977, the Carter administration started an urban renewal program. And with that, they basically took areas of blight and communities that were across our nation, not just here, but across our nation. They took areas of blight and they looked at those areas and they created this program that actually came back in and rebuilt those communities. And the community that the Vine Street, Cherry Street, Kane, Walnut, Davis Street, the area that Ms. Tate so fondly calls Old Town, was impacted by that heavily. And when you look at Vine Street, nearly all of those houses, there are 1 or 2 that were not built through the urban renewal program. Is that accurate, Carol? And Cherry Street the same way. There were 1 or 2 that were not a part of the urban renewal program. Kane Street, of course, those houses, those 2 houses that are on there weren't urban renewal, but they were a part of the footprint of that. Walnut Street, same thing, Davis Street. If you go down, if you drive to Leon Sheffield and you go down Davis Street, every house that you see except the last one before you get to Leon Sheffield, the Powers home, was a product of urban renewal. And as they came through and they did this urban renewal program, there were lots that were left available and throughout that community. And on Cherry Street, at the end of Cherry Street, at the end of Walnut Street, at the end of many of these streets, there were vacant properties. In the late 1990s, and I understand that this predates most of this council, well, all of this council basically, except me, not just in council term, but in the fact that they weren't born yet. So
I was born.
in 1977 you weren't.
The 90s.
In 1977 you weren't when this program started. So in the late 90s, in anticipation of Caston Homes being demolished and the creation of what's now King Estates, the city of Decatur deeded some of those vacant properties that we had over to the Housing Authority. And it was a good partnership, and we worked with them and they worked with us. In 2004, I wanted to build a baseball park at the end of Cherry Street and near Madison and Grove Street, and you guys know that park is Butch Matthews Field now. And what I hoped at that particular time was to establish a healthy relationship between what we called then Crosstown and Westtown, because we had a field over at Cash and Wheeler and it was Westtown, and it was an effort to try to bring the two communities together. So I approached Jeff Sneed with the Housing Authority, and I approached Bob Neal, who was then the executive director of the Housing Authority, and explained the concept, and they deeded the land back to the city of Decatur. And that happened on April 29th of '04. In 2007, when I had a desire to do Sister Johnson Park, which is on Davis Street, I approached Mr. Sneed again, and again, the Housing Authority deeded that property back to the city. So in 2010, because the Housing Authority had planned to build affordable housing in our community, I asked the council at that particular time to gift the Housing Authority approximately 2 acres that's bracketed by 13th Avenue Northwest, 12th Avenue Northwest, and 6th Street Northwest, and the council did. In 2015, the Housing Authority hadn't built anything there, and they're going to use that for affordable housing. So when I wanted to do Rough Rider Park, I went back to them and I asked them for that property again, for that property, a small portion of the roughly 2 acres that we had at that particular time, and they deeded that property back to us. 2 years ago, Brandon Watkins and I went over and we looked at this property, and I was hoping that he'd be here today because we met again out there on Friday, and we looked at this as a very good potential for the DYS facility. And when Herman says the other day at our last meeting that we gave the mayor authority to negotiate property on Modus Road because there could have been multiple properties and there was only one property here, that's not true. There were multiple properties in this immediate community. As a matter of fact, you can see the property on 6th Street from the property that we're discussing today. So I've been here long enough to know or be a part of the process when we added on to the Aquadome and did youth services there. I remember when youth services was immediately across the street from the property on 13th Avenue that I'm discussing, in the little white building that's directly at the end of 13th Avenue. So the big question today is why pay $170,000 plus for land when it's likely that we could get land back that was once ours by simply asking. That's all we have to do is ask. And we have a historical marker that shows that, you know, when we give land and they don't use it, they give it back. So what happens if the Housing Authority comes back and they say, well, we have a plan for affordable housing to go there, just as we once did. Then if we don't purchase the land for $170,000+ and they deed the land back to us, they still had the larger tract of land at $170,000+. So at this particular point today, I am, as I said earlier, fully committed to making sure that DYS has a facility, as I was when we moved them from 13th Avenue to the Aquadome. but I cannot support this because I don't see the need in us paying $170,000 when likely we can get land for free and accomplish the same thing in a very needed area as agreed upon by our director.
Out of curiosity, would you support tabling the motion to see if we could attempt that?
I mean, that's up to the council. I was never involved in the discussion, Hunter.
Neither was I.
Yeah, so I was never involved in the discussion. So if the council deems it appropriate to table this and us have that discussion, I don't have a problem with that. But I do think that I've been on this council for almost 26 years. I've lived in that immediate community for 60 plus years. So I know that community, and the people of that community know that I know that community. I was raised in that community. So it's hard for me to understand why all of the discussion took place and I was not a part of that, an integral part of that. So again, this would have come out earlier had we had those discussions. So if the council wants to table that and we approach the housing authority and see if they're amenable to that, then I'm open to that.
I'll make a motion to table.
All right, we have a motion to table. Mr. Pepper, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, second by Mr. Jackson. Any discussion, and this is on tabling the issue?
So Herman, with the way that contract is set up, we have plenty of outs if we don't want to go through with the purchase, correct?
Yeah, but we're gonna start, the city's gonna start spending money on the property.
testing.
For the testing,
You
okay.
don't wanna, if you don't want to consider that location, my thought is you don't wanna spend money investigating.
Mr. Jackson, you said there were other properties. Where would they be?
There are other properties very nearby there, but that's the optimal one. And it's right across from the housing project. It puts our youth services department in an area where they need to be. If we're gonna do it in the community, they need to do it. They need to be near the housing project as agreed upon by Mr. Watkins, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. I expected them to be here today, but you can actually see this property literally. Well, you've been to Rough Rider Park.
Yeah.
It's the land that surrounds Rough Rider Park, and it's just under 2 acres. I think it's 1.6 something acres at this particular point, but more than enough land for us to put a youth services facility there, have parking there, and do anything that we need to do. And again, we deeded that land to them in anticipation that they were going to do something with it in 2010. 13 years later, they've not made that move. So it makes sense that Mr. Neal and Mr. Sneed worked with us before to deed land back to us. It's hard for me to understand why they wouldn't deed it back to us now.
So with your experience and such, have you, I would just think that you've already had a conversation with the housing authority.
Not about that particular piece of property. Again, this process moved on without my involvement.
You've been involved in this from the beginning.
I have not. You had discussions with the housing authority. When we talked about public conversation regarding this, I went back and I asked Bain, well, maybe Bain, I missed a meeting or something and there was public conversation that I missed. There wasn't. There's not been the public conversation that we talked about.
When I say you've been involved, you've been opposed to this location. You wanted
No.
to have it at.
As a matter of fact,
I'm not through.
this would be a secondary location. Well, you're putting words in my mouth that aren't true. But this would be a secondary location and I don't have a problem with spending the $171,000 if we don't have other alternatives. But we have other alternatives on the table.
So you've wanted the facility done at the location, the current location, but soil testing has said that's not a good idea.
No, I've never wanted youth services done where the Carrie Matthews Center is. Never. As a matter of fact, the community is heavily in support of restoration of Carrie Matthews, so we've never been in support of that, and you know that. So the fact very simply is that to say that Carrie Matthews and youth services are synonymous, they're not. They're absolutely, totally different entities. Parks and Rec is where Carrie Matthews needs to be. Youth Services is a totally different entity that deals with kids and kids programs. Now they do have senior programs, But if we have a gym at that facility, an adult can't go in there and have open basketball. They can do that at Carey Matthews. And that's part of our community. It's been a part of our community since 1969. And as I've explained over and over and over again, we've had everything under the sun that you could possibly have in a community center in Carey Matthews. So it means a lot to the people. So no, I'm not asking for it to be where Carey Matthews is. I'm asking for it to be in a location in the community, as our Director of Youth Services said he wants in our community, just not the location that we're selecting right now.
So Carey, Youth Services has been operating out of Carey Matthews prior to the, whenever the floor was taken up. Is that?
That's accurate.
Okay.
That's accurate.
All right, so
but again, it was out of necessity. It was not because Carey Matthews did not need to be a recreational facility, and it does need to be.
So whenever we were looking at land to build a DYS center on, doing it across the street just seemed like a logical thing based on some of the comments you were making.
No, I think that if I had been involved in that discussion, then you would have found that that was not the most logical. As a matter of fact, like I said, Brandon and I met over there more than 2 years ago to discuss the alternate location.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we do have a motion and a second to table. I will point out, you and I and Brandon
met at Carey
Matthews, and we had a discussion about the property that is in question here. And I've had multiple conversations with Brandon where he seemed to be supportive of that property.
And he's supportive of it. Don't get me wrong. Mr. Watkins is in need of a facility. So if it's at the facility that we're discussing for the $170,000, he is absolutely in favor because he needs a facility.
Gotcha.
There's no question about that.
I thought you were saying he was in favor of a different site over this one. But
I think what he basically says is that he doesn't care where it is. But again, this doesn't fall on, and it's just like I told Mr. Watkins, it's not my responsibility to make sure that I choose a place that you like. If we put, and no disrespect to youth services, but if we put youth services in the basement of this building and told them that's where they need to operate, then that's where they operate. It's our position that it's our responsibility to choose a good and viable location for them. So his thing is that he doesn't have a problem at all with either location. He just needs a location.
And at that time, you were making the argument that I think the crosstown argument of you had potentially a lot of foot traffic that would move through that area, and it was your argument then was for Carey Matthews restoration. And that,
but not as youth services.
I know.
Okay.
I think I told Bane the other day those are separate issues.
Absolutely. And I saw that.
Which is why I do think, although it's in the general vicinity, this would provide access for that type of traffic too.
We're literally from Carey Matthews. We're literally about not even 2 blocks away from this facility. I mean, from this location, not even 2 blocks away. So you can actually see it from Carey Matthews. You can see it from the place that we're discussing today. So it's not, it's a, I wouldn't say a stone's throw, but it's not a far distance at all.
All right, any other discussion? This is a motion to table. Roll call?
Blattner.
No.
McMaster.
No.
Jackson.
Aye.
Pike.
No.
Pepper.
Aye.
All right, the motion to table fails 3-2, and we do have a motion and a second to vote on the purchase of the property. Any discussion on that? Roll call?
Blattner.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
No.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
No.
All right, resolution 23043 is approved 3-2. Next is resolution 23044, approved DDRA, additional appropriation for Johnston Street Alley Improvement Project.
Mayor, Council, Kelly Thomas, Decatur Downtown Redevelopment Authority. We are just asking the council to commit $150,000 to this project. It's an improvement project for the alleyway. We'd like it to become a city park with multiple amenities. We've committed $129,500 to this project.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Pepper. Second. Second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion?
Yeah, I know that Carl says that he's looked at it now and that the project works, but when we looked at it, what was that, Carl, 4 or 5 years ago? I think that the estimated cost was over $1 million just from conversation. So it's really difficult for me to think that we can do this thing for roughly $270,000 and DDRA, whoever's not coming back to the city and asking for additional funds in the very near future, so I won't support this today.
I do think the alley, as far as drainage goes, Carl, you can speak to it better, is gonna remain as is. The flume will be going back in. I think it'll be a different finish, right? There's no changing of the flow.
What I've been discussed, the elevations will stay the same as they were before. And it would be a flume-ish in the bottom, it's just be stamped concrete versus just standard concrete.
So that's the situation now until we decide that it's not. Okay.
Well, yes.
All right, any other discussion? Roll call. Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution 23044 is approved 4-1. Resolution 23045 approved funding for locating Horton House in Decatur CODA project. And I did have a few people that signed up for public comment. Mr. Underwood, you can go first.
And even before public comment, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I do have a motion by Mr. Jackson. Does somebody want to go ahead and second that?
I mean, we don't have to vote now. I just wanted to get that out there.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. McMasters. Herb, go ahead.
I'm Herbert Underwood, 16 Cherry Street Northwest. I have a few quotes and a comment or two. 1963, I have a dream speech. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. In the process of gaining our rightful peace, in the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul power. We can never be satisfied as long as Negroes is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood. And robbed of their dignity. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, I have a dream that one day the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where our fathers died, land of pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. MLK, August 1963. and a few comments. When Tommy Lee Hines was asked how long a day lasts, he said, 1 month. 1 month for 1 day, for 1 life. That's what we speak for today. There is more risk and greater cost in gradualism than there is in aggressive action.
Herb, try to wrap up. We just hit the 3 minutes.
Thank you, council. Thank you, citizens.
Thanks, Herb. Gerald or Francis, either of the two signed in.
Good morning, Mayor and Council and members of the community. We've met with the council a few times before today, working toward the process of securing the funding for the Horton House. Each time that we've met, we've stressed the opportunity of a lifetime. We've also stressed the pressure of getting this done. We hope that today will be the day, because remember, today is tomorrow's history. What we do today will be in history books. So make sure that we're on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald. Ms. Tate? You go ahead.
Francis Tate, 506 Monroe Drive, Decatur, Alabama. Just a few statements. Mostly my comments probably after you vote, but everybody knows the importance of the trial here. They know the story we have. We have a rich story that no one has. There's no question the economic value that the city would incur years after we're gone off the scene. So there shouldn't be a question about the funding. If we can get it reduced, wonderful. But we need to make the decision today. We're going to do the project or we're not going to do the project. And so we can move on with the program and bring this complete project to fruition. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Tate. And I will build on what she said. I've heard folks say maybe table this, but that's not an option today. Nope. Obviously, it's always an option. Somebody can make that motion, but it's not a real option. The decision has to be made today. So what you said is correct. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I had a lady to call me on Friday, and she said that she asked me how this was going to go. I said I have no clue. She asked me if I was going to support this, and I told this person that I absolutely was going to support it, or that I am going to support it. And she said her thing was she had an issue with the fact that Decatur has, as Herb has mentioned in different conversations and to this council, she said that Decatur had a rough history when it came to race relations, and that this might only open up some of those wounds and make things bad and bring out old memories. And my position with her was that if we keep covering these things up, then we don't cross those bridges. And we have to cross those bridges, and this was a very integral part of our city's formation. And this was an important part of our, or is an important part of our city's history. And I went over to the archives, and I went and looked back at the Scottsboro Boys room. And if you've never done it, it's very telling. It's very telling. And it opens up your eyes to things that you may have thought that you knew or may have forgotten, but it is so critical that we do this project today, because it is a part of our history, as I said before, and it will open up people's eyes to some of the atrocities that have happened that we should not ever cross again. So this is important to the city, it's important to this community, and I would ask that the council would support it today.
Thanks, Mr. Jackson. Any other discussion?
I've got just a few more questions, and Ms. Tate, Ms. Tate and I have just worn each other out. She loves hearing from me with my questions. And she's been very helpful in helping me get to some of the answers I've needed to get to. So we're talking economic impact and every besides to just do what's right. So the kind of carrot for us is, well, think of all the visitors it's going to bring because of this. Where does it go?
Where is what going?
Where is the house going to go? Is it going to go next to the Price House where it is now?
We have purchased already property. I'm sorry if you didn't get that information. I thought I put it in your pack. 212 Church Street, which is right down from the property. You can look at the Horton House. You can see the complete museum.
Okay. And so with this 888-774, does that, we know that covers the move, but do you guys have funding in place for foundation and HVAC and all that other stuff? I guess, some of my fear with this is, and I'm going to vote to support this because it's right and I think we should, but I do have some concerns.
If you look on the cost report, you'll see that it's included in there.
Yeah, HVAC is part of that.
HVAC was.
And then reconnecting, Francis, I think you have some funding for that as well.
Yep. It's in the cost chart.
Yes.
We have worked almost 2 years on this. We have checked to see if we could bring it by air, land, or water, and what is the best route, the best way to get it here. And this is the best way that we found when you think of cost. So we have done our due diligence. We just hadn't overnight decided, here it is. This has been thought through. Everything that we can think of and the mover, we have tried to cover. Now, we might run into some difficulties later. So what? We will overcome them. We'll address them when we have them. That's within the project.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And Ms. Tate, I think it's important. This was really phase 3 of the overall project. There was a time frame, and the council president kind of spoke to that too. That we had to get this done. Is that right? So you're still working on that phase 1 and 2, but this came up and just had to be addressed.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And if you go by phase 1, you will see the addition that we've already done to the dilapidated property we acquired. And it almost looked like a part of the community. We have a few windows problems which cannot be addressed right now until we get the foundation done.
Do you have to come up with the foundation people?
We've gotten several.
And we've talked about.
Right. But the one you never call me back. So that tells me I don't need to do business with you.
No, you don't. No, they don't call you back. Just giving options.
That's right. And I thank you. Thank you.
You might just want to hang out.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other discussion?
What I discussed during the pre-meeting, seeing if we can just look at trying, because of the way that it's worded, up to that amount, and see if we can find a way to get the cost down.
I'm going to support this today, but I definitely think that as we're working through it, that is a good opportunity to have some cost savings. But I'm excited about this project. We've spoke about it a few times.
And I agree with you. I have absolutely no problem. If you could get in kind or the price reduced, wonderful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I've got a couple of comments, and first I want to thank the Faulkner and Horton family you're donating a house that could be sold for real money. So We appreciate that, and I'll just leave that there. And I know a lot of what I may discuss in a minute is that we had a deadline for today, and I don't mean that in a negative way because it's been in process for over 2 years, I think. So we appreciate the 2 extra weeks. I will say just a couple of comments. I had expressed some concerns, I think, at the first meeting 3 weeks ago at the work session, and I still have those concerns. The concerns are we drop it in place at the property that's been purchased, and then what? How do we get to day 1 opening? And I'm sure there's a good plan for that. I just haven't seen it. And to get the type of fundraising it's going to take to get the doors open, you're really going to have to show corporations, and it's kind of like the bridge study. You know, a lot of people have asked me, why y'all got to pay $2 million to do this study for a bridge? Just go ask, the federal government. And they're not even going to give you the time of day in this bridge study if you don't have environmentals and origin destination and $2 million worth of studying. You have to be prepared when you go ask for that type of funding. So whether it's grants, whether it's donations from individuals, corporations, that's going to be important. And I think that can be accomplished. I just haven't seen a detailed plan on how we get to opening day 1. Executive director is very important. I was informed that you guys have looked and maybe found somebody that would be good. I don't know their background. I don't know if they've ever fundraised. I don't know if they've ever taken a project like this that is going to take $15–20 million and then run a museum like this. Maybe they have, I just don't know. We have had, I think generally, we've heard a lot of support in my district, District 5, which is kind of the opposite, side here. I'm in Southwest, but I've gotten people that have called me very supportive of the project in my district. I've had people call me who are not supportive of the project. A lot of people think, there should be a match. The city does $500,000 and then Scioto can raise $250,000. And I've told them, well, that's not an option. Today's the day. It's either got to be funded or not. But I think it's important to know there's differing opinions, as you would expect, on an $880,000+ expenditure. The fact is, because it's been a long time and the family has been very patient, I think, with everybody, as you and I talked about, Francis, that we have 2 choices today. And one is we could say no and not spend the money. And there's good arguments. I've heard good arguments for saying no. But if you do that, you never know what could have been or what might have been. Or we can say yes, and then the house gets moved, and we're putting a lot of faith and maybe a little bit of pressure on the board to get this thing done. This is not, I think at the end of this, it sounds like likely will pass. We'll see in just a few minutes. Don't thank us. This is, well, I guess we're all a little bit a part of it, but this is 60,000 residents' money. And Mr. Jackson points that out a lot, is we're using other people's money, and sometimes he has disagreed with some things we've said yes to, and probably vice versa. But it's not it's the citizens' money that we're using to do this. I think if this was my business, I don't know that I have enough information to spend this type of money. But with kind of this deadline we've been given today, and again, appreciative of the extra time to try to get some costs down, I think we could be missing a big opportunity, and at least we'll have the opportunity to see that. So with that, I will support it, but I do have some of the same concerns, and I just wanted to express those. So.
Okay.
All right. And I hope we'll have updates and things. And I know your phone's always on if we have questions down the road.
Absolutely.
To call progress. So, and appreciative of the board too. You guys have been very supportive at the meetings. Made very good points. Gerald's driving from Birmingham every time, so appreciate him. But that's all my comments. Any other discussion? All right, we do have a motion and a second. Roll call. Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Aye.
Pepper.
No.
All right, resolution 23045 is approved with a vote of 4-1. Thank you, Ms. Tate.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move into ordinance. If y'all don't mind just hanging out, we're going to get done really quick, I think. Ordinance 23. Ordinance 234550, amend transient occupancy tax ordinance.
Yeah, that's been discussed several times. It increases the occupancy tax 3% in the corporate limits, 1.5 in the PJ, and it'll be used for economic development and recreational purposes.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Pepper.
Second.
Second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion?
Just to note, this isn't a tax on Decatur residents.
Yeah, this is lodging tax increase, and I think you presented to the Hospitality Association with it, which includes a lot of hotel folks. I've heard nothing.
There was no opposition at that meeting, nor has there been since. I've had nobody reach out, so. And this
Right.
brings us in line with surrounding communities.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Widener.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Ordinance 234550, it's approved 5-0. Boards and committees, reappoint Police Chief Todd Pinion to the Morgan County Emergency 911 Board, term expiring April 11th, 2027.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Pepper, second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion? Roll call.
Widener.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Chief Pinion is reappointed with a vote of 5-0. Reappoint Dr. S. Kenny Copeland to the Healthcare Authority Board with term expiring January 1st, 26.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by McMaster, second by Pike. Any discussion? Roll call.
Widener.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Ken Copeland is reappointed 5-0. Reappoint Melissa Craig to the Healthcare Authority Board with term expiring December 31st, 28.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Pike.
Second.
Second by Mr. McMasters. Any discussion? Roll call.
Widener.
Aye.
McMaster.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
Melissa Craig is reappointed 5-0. Next council work session will be held on February 27th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Next regular council meeting will be held on March 6th, 23 at 6 p.m. Directors, anything? Managers? Mayor?
Yes, sir. A couple of weeks ago, folks from Hands Across America came to the
Hands
council.
Across Decatur.
Hands Across Decatur, excuse me. Came to, well, they're trying to get all across America. Came to the council, before the council, and requested assistance with grants. And with that, our grants administrator has offered to do some training. We have about, how many nonprofits now that are doing their own?
United Way has right at 26 that we assist, so there's 20, there's probably any close to 30 nonprofits throughout the city.
That are doing their own grants?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we just don't have enough bandwidth to do them
No, sir.
ourselves, okay? So we certainly hope that Hands Across Decatur will come in and take advantage of that. Just wanted to share that. And then this weekend, we had a fabulous time in the city. Really, it's a season, the Carnegie season, and Kim Mitchell is with us today. Kim's the executive director of the Carnegie Art Museum. And Kim, thank you again for your leadership. It was a one-up kind of a day, and then I think it's always exciting to hear whenever you share the amount of money that was raised. That's what it's all about, is raising funds, right?
Oh, yeah, and tourism and bringing Decatur together.
There you go. All right. But I'm going to use a deacon's count here. I shared that with you. But the Prince and Princess, actually about $100,000 they raised, and that's outstanding. Collectively, a little north of maybe 300,000?
A little south is 300,000, somewhere around there. We'll find out in the next week.
Okay.
We did really well. We were very happy with all the support the community offered our candidates, and they did a great job.
So you get to raise that kind of money, and we get to have a lot of fun along the way. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Mayor. Anything else from council? All right, we'll stand adjourned. Thanks.